Hello, who am I? I'm actually friggin' doing an opening clip when I'm starting the vlog. So hello, it's Meredith, and today I'm going to be starting a month-long, hopefully not the full month, hopefully like 3 weeks of the month, long project of a chicken, I'm the chicken, reading horror and thrillers, which just seems like a stupid concept because it's just like, why are you terrifying yourself? And it's not for views because I don't get a lot of views, so I don't know why I'm doing it. Okay, there's no reason here, I'm just doing it. So I put out a question, I uploaded some questions to oh my god, I can't take myself seriously now. Okay, so I put up some questions asking people for some recommendations of not super scary horrors and thrillers. And I said I've got 3 things that terrify me that I do not want in these recommendations. House invasion, kidnapping, being held captive. I can't deal with it. It's like my biggest fear. I can't read about it. I tried to read one in January for a book club and I just couldn't sleep. So no. And I got a bunch of recommendations. So thank you everyone that recommended books to me. Unfortunately, I can't get to all of them because I didn't want to spend money on these because this isn't a genre that I will go back to. It's not something that I, actually read. So I only wanted to read ones that I had access to, books, audiobooks through library subscriptions I have and stuff. So if I couldn't, unfortunately I would not be getting to those, but I'll be getting to as much as I can. I've taken one recommendation from everyone that I could, and everyone was giving me great suggestions. Then I got to Amy from BookTube with Amy. Amy suggested me Misery, which I was kind of like, okay, so I was like, don't recommend me a kidnapping being held captive story. And Amy's like, I'm gonna recommend you one. I was like, Amy, why? And I really like Amy, but I couldn't get access to any of the other books she recommended me. And I was like, I don't want to just not read a book Amy recommended because I really like Amy. I thought, fine, I'll read Misery. And then they gave me the idea. So actually, Amy, you were doing the Lord's work. You didn't know it, but you were doing it. I was like, I'll probably end with Misery because it's the scariest. And it gave me the idea that I'm going to put the books that I'm going to read into an order of what I think is going to be the least scary, ending on Misery, which I think will be the least scary. And I'm going to see how far I can get through the list. We'll see if I can get to the end and get to Misery. We're going to see how I go. We're going to see how far through the list I can get. So here's the list and the people that recommended me the books. So thank you so much. So 10 at the top is the least scary, leading up to the scariest, which is of course Misery. And we're going to see how far this chicken can get. A few weeks ago, someone actually got into Liam's car and went through his car that was in our driveway. So I am already kind of scared. So, because apparently we've moved into a super bogan area. So this seems like a really good idea. Also, in the comments, I would love to see how far you think I'm going to get before you watch the video. So I'd love to hear predictions, where you think I'm going to stop. All right, let's go.
Yeah, cool. We saw a hardback. We don't see them often here. We got excited.
Plus it's very pretty.
Yeah.
Hello. And as you saw, I met Mel, which was really exciting. She's so lovely and it was really fun. So hopefully we can meet up another time in the future. I only got that one clip, but she got quite a bit of footage. So if you want to see how we went, what we ended up buying at the bookstore, you can watch. I'm assuming she's going to put it in her next vlog. Go subscribe to her, check out her channel, and you can see there in the future. I don't know. Or it's already there. Who knows? So yeah, that was really nice. And it was really fun just meeting another booktuber. I'd also never just like met a booktuber. I've been watching booktube since I was like, what, 16 or something. So it was very strange actually meeting one, even though I'm now one. I don't think of myself as one. But like Mel's nearly at 1K. So like Mel to me is a booktuber, whereas I'm just a noob sitting in front of a camera trying my hardest. But in amongst all of that, I did end up reading In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. So this is a like, I would say this is like If We Were Villains, The Secret History, but I don't really know if I'd call this dark academia, but it has the same kind of plot line where you have this group of friends and one of them's murdered, and then we jump forward to the present and it's kind of exploring what happened and we're learning how this person was killed. And they're stabbed like multiple times in their bed. So it's really graphic in this one. And we follow one character who is like part of the group, obviously. And the reason that we're going back in this one is that there is a reunion for the school that they were at. And so they're all going back, this friend group, and they've kind of fallen apart because of what happened, but there are all these ways they're still kind of interconnected. Like a lot of them have gotten married, some of them still talk. Like the girl in their group that was murdered had a boyfriend at the time, and he was kind of the one that everyone thought did it, but he was never like convicted or anything. And the main character is still in contact with him because she believes that he didn't do it, and everyone else has ostracized him. And she had a boyfriend at the time, but he cheated on her and married the person that he cheated on her with, who was like her enemy. And then you've also got like the guy that she kind of has a thing for now, but he's now engaged to another chick in the friend group who's like her best friend, but she hasn't told the best friend that she's talking to the other guy. It's funny how they kind of fell apart, but in a way they're still interconnected, which is really interesting. So it's this really like tense dynamic between the group as it is. And then when they get there, the brother of the girl that was murdered kind of says to them, I'm going to figure out which one of you motherfuckers did it. I'm going to figure out what happened to my sister, which is fair enough. Go him. And we love the drama because he does it in a very over the top way, which did make me cringe and laugh, but also good for you. So yeah, it's kind of following them figuring out what happened. She's going back to the past. We're learning things about her. We're learning things about the other characters. They've all kind of got their secrety secrets. And I didn't hate this. I'm actually kind of shocked that so many people really, really like this, because I thought this was like a mediocre version of the other two books I said before. And I don't think this was super well written, actually. Like, oh, I feel really mean saying this, but the start of the book was really bad. So like, it started with the chick looking in a mirror and just telling us everything about her. Like, I want to be the top of everything. I've worked really hard on my life because of my relationship with my dad, and I'm like a perfectionist. And like, she's just telling us that while looking in the mirror. And I thought that was just like so cliche, unoriginal, and so bad. Can you come up with a better way to write that? But yeah, just some of the writing was a bit boost. The story was actually quite fun, but it's the kind of book that I don't really think I'm ever going to think about again. Like, it was a little bit shocking at times, but not enough that it's memorable. I also feel like the characters were the typical unlikable characters, but there wasn't enough depth or complexity. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm such a dickhead. You know, there wasn't enough to it for it to work enough for them to be memorable. So it was like, yeah, they were shitty people, but there wasn't enough to them that it was a really enjoyable experience reading about them in that way. So they just fell a little bit flat for me, and they're not characters again I'm gonna like emotionally return to at any point. But like, yeah, it was still fun. I didn't necessarily get the twist at the end, but there were elements to it that I did predict, but I think they were really obvious, which I'm surprised they were even written as a twist, because I just feel like it was so obvious. Anyway, so yeah, I gave it like 3.5 stars. The pacing and building was done pretty well. So like, it was a good like thriller mystery, like one that's really fun to read at the time, but not one you'll return to, which is how I feel like I feel about a lot of like thrillery mystery books, which is fine because it's not my go-to genre anyway. So yeah, but thank you, Lo, for suggesting this. And also thank you because like you suggested what I asked for, which was like a non-scary like thriller, horror, mystery, which is what this is. Like, it's a not scary thriller. So yeah, I think that it's probably in the position that's correct at the bottom. But yeah, I made it past the first book. So go me. I managed to read one book. Woo! I look fucking terrible. Anyway, I'm here to say that I've finished and read. Well, in saying I've finished it insinuates that I've read it, Meredith. But anyway, I have read The Luminous Dead. I'm trying to think how I will even describe what this is. So it's like it's kind of actually a sci-fi, and it is from my library put as a sci-fi. And so basically people do these expeditions in these like underground caves. Our main character is going on one of these expeditions into the caves, and she thinks it's for mapping mineral deposits, but she ends up realizing that this is not a normal mission. Basically they are very dangerous, so you get paid a lot, but a lot of people do die on these missions. That's why the pay is so high. And our main character really wants to do this to get the money because she wants to travel to other planets to try and find her mother who has disappeared. And she believes she's on one of these other particular planets. And so she goes on this underground expedition, and normally you'll have contact with a bunch of people on a team, but she realizes pretty early on that there's only one person communicating with her, and they are barely communicating, and they're sus as fuck. So she's like underground, stuck in a suit, you know, very claustrophobic, creepy environment, plus her only communication with the outside world is being sus as fuck. Sets up this very creepy, atmospheric... Sorry, my arm's getting tired.
You fellas have nothing to worry about. I'm a professional.
Yeah, it sets up this very creepy, atmospheric vibe. So it is very creepy in that regard, and I do think that was set up really well. But this isn't really what it's expecting, because it says that like she's being followed, or she feels like she's being followed. So it adds that layer of like creepiness, but I don't really like what was done with that. I was wanting a little bit more. I was expecting something super freaking creepy to happen, and it's like this book is building and building and building and building the entire time, and I just don't think there was a very good like payoff with that. So yeah, I just think that there wasn't much of a payoff with this, and it was definitely more focused on this creepy atmosphere and the relationship between the two characters and kind of their plot lines, which were both capturing grief and needing to let go of grief, and how holding on to these things and making them your purpose in life isn't beneficial, and you need to kind of learn to let go of things to an extent. And it was definitely sort of capturing that throughout this story, which I just like wasn't expecting, because I was like, okay, this is going to be terrifying, and it was like a heartfelt emotional story. I was like, what the fuck? So yeah, and it does have a female romance and morally great characters, obviously, so it's pretty fun and creepy, and definitely like the creepy vibes, but I think that there just wasn't enough of a payoff for me. Also, I feel like there were just so many things left unanswered, and I don't know if that was like intentional or not, because this was actually really well written, and I'm quite surprised this debut, because I think the writing was really, really good, and obviously atmosphere and pacing was really set up brilliantly. I think that maybe the direction the author took was like, you're never going to get all the answers to things. And I think that that went well with like the themes of the story, in that you need to just let go of some things, you need to move on. And it's kind of like they didn't get all the answers from what was happening, but it's okay, and you never will. Like, it kind of captured that you will never get everything, and you need to just learn to say, okay, enough's enough. I think it went well with the themes and the vibe of the story, but at the same time I was just like, really? You're gonna build up all that and then give us like, nothing. But yeah, I still enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Might put it up to a 4, because it was still like fun and enjoyable. I just had like, I obviously can't let go of it. I can't let go of it. So this book was probably telling me something and I missed it. That's that one, but it definitely wasn't really scary. There was like one part that made me like go, oh my god. Thank you for that recommendation, Ren. I did enjoy it. I feel like I was just shitting on it for the most part, but I did still have like a good time. It was very gripping and scary. So yeah, thank you for the recommendation. Sorry I look terrible, but I just wanted to update that I've read and finished the Jumpies. So I've made it through another level, but I wasn't expecting a middle grade horror to absolutely scare the shit out of me and be where I... That's better. I didn't expect this to be where I would, like, stop. But, you know, Neil Gaiman has just made me sus about middle grade horror. Because Coraline is horrific, so, you know, I never know. But yeah, this definitely wasn't like super scary or anything. So yeah, this is a middle grade horror and it's Caribbean inspired, and it follows a young girl who is a super badass. She's not scared of anything, and she's convincing herself that she's not scared of the Jumpies, which are this like evil creature that she believes parents just make up to scare their children. But her father ends up seeing a new woman, and she believes that the new woman her dad is dating is a very evil Jumpy, and she starts to get scared. And so it's following the events of that. It's really fun. It's an adventure. It's super cute. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. It's probably my favorite thing I've read so far. It was just, I don't know, it was fun, and it gave me everything I was looking for from this. Like, I just wanted a fun, good time, nothing too scary, a fun adventure, you know, a really admirable character for kids, and that's what I got. So I think this is really good for like a nice, fun, spooky book to read to your kids. I don't think it was too scary, but I think that it was written in a way where like kids would be kind of spooked. I just think that like the whole like evil stepmom kind of trope just always works with kids. Like, I just think it's such a good idea. Like, there is nothing worse than your parent being replaced with someone evil. Like, that is just horrifying as a child. Like, I always hated those plot lines. So yeah, I think that like it's effective in a way for kids because it's something that kids kind of don't, you know, like. So yeah, I think that this was really fun, and I highly recommend, just for like, again, a nice spooky little middle grade. I don't really know what else to say. I never have a lot to say about middle grade just because I don't read it a lot, and like, I never really read. When I was a kid, I never read kids' books. I basically had no interest, and then I got to the age where I could read romance books, and that's kind of where I've taken off. So I don't know what else to say. Like, it was well written, it was well paced, the characters, again, were good for kids, it was engaging because you were wanting to find out what was going to happen. It's a cool, different setting that I haven't really read about. So yeah, 4 stars. It wasn't too spooky, and I think that this was a really good recommendation. So thank you, Sasha, because this is kind of what I was looking for. And yeah, it's my favorite book I've read so far for this project. So very happy that I picked this little cutie up. Back with the terrible angles, but I wanted to do a reading update for Summer Suns. I'm sorry, this is a library copy and it's just very, very bright. But this is confusing me the fuck out. Like, I don't actually think I know what's going on, like, at all. So I'm this far through, so I'm like a third of the way through, and I just don't know what the fuck's going on. So the story is about these 2 best friends, and one of them ends up going to uni and moves away, and the other doesn't. And then the one that didn't move away has plans to move there to be with their friend, but a week before they move, their friend actually takes their own life. And the friend still decides to go ahead with the move, but believes that their friend didn't take their own life and believes that something happened, they might have been murdered, and so they are going to investigate what happened. They're like involved in this weird stuff, like, and like he and his friend went into some weird stuff. They like, it's got something to do with like the dead, so it's like kind of hinted at, and it's kind of hinted at that there's like these creepy afterlife beings, but it's not explained at all. It's just like mentioned as if it's like we're talking about a Big Mac or something, you know, like I'm like, that's not actually normal, and I feel like you need to explain that, but you're not. So good for you, like, you do what you want, but I don't know what the fuck's going on, so it's making me not enjoy your book. Okay, So I don't know if that's like intentional. I don't know if things are going to start making sense. I don't know if I'm dumb.
That's the problem.
Same.
But the writing's quite cool. I quite like it. It's very well written in my opinion. I think that the characterization's built really well. Things are just written differently. Like, I feel like the sentences are always saying things in a different way rather than just like describing things in the generic way. Like, it just feels like this author has a really good grasp of like language and how to structure sentences in just a different way. I don't know, like everything feels differently written, which makes it feel nice and refreshing. And it means like I'm enjoying what I'm reading because it is done in such a fun way, but it's just like, I don't know what's going on. And I also don't have a lot of emotions about any of the characters because this is a book that we kind of just like are thrown into, and I feel like I haven't had a chance to just sit with the characters. And possibly that's to kind of mimic the, I guess, emotional state the main character's in, where they're just go trying to figure out what happened rather than to just sit with their grief. Yeah, I'm having a weird time with it. So I guess I'll just update you when I finish, and hopefully I, by the end of it, understand what's happening a little bit. Okay, story time. 2 nights ago now? 3 nights ago? Anyway, a few nights ago, Liam wasn't home. He was out working, and so I was home alone that night. And it's like 2 a.m. I'm woken up by someone banging on the front door, like hardcore banging, and I'm like, well, that's concerning. So I'm instantly terrified, and the banging continues for quite a while, and then the person starts saying, please, 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 like they're drunk. And I'm like, should I have maybe called the police to make sure this person's okay? Possibly. I don't know. It was a woman, and they kept like shining their light in the windows. Like, I'm terrified, right? Like, I absolutely terrified. I'm like, this is how I die. This random woman is gonna come inside and stab me. Like, this is how I die. She eventually left, but then, you know, maybe 10 minutes after she had eventually stopped, I start hearing like the sound of like guys talking, laughing, hear a bit of swearing, and that like constantly, it's like they're constantly driving off, and it sounded like they were feeling like a ute or something. And I'm like, okay, so now there's a bunch of like dudes, you know, going into people's houses and stealing shit. Like, awesome. And that went on for a while, so as you can imagine, I didn't get a lot of sleep. Also, it's like pouring down with rain, right? So I'm like, why the hell are all these people out in the rain? I don't know. Didn't get much sleep that night. I eventually did get to sleep probably around like 5. And I was woken up at 7 to Liam being like, yo, the street's flooded. The river had flooded and it was pouring into the houses, and they wanted everyone to evacuate just in case, you know, things go bad. So it was like an emergency evacuation. We're all good. We're back. We went and stayed with Liam's dad, and yeah, the waters went completely back down, so it's back to normal now. There is more rain expected, but it's not expected to be as heavy, and I think the river's expected to go down in the few days that we're not really getting rain, so that it won't flood again. These last few days have been very stressful, but I've managed to get some reading in still. Because what do you do when you're stressed and hate life? You read. You read to escape. So I have finished Summer Suns, and I feel kind of sad that this was my comfort book because I didn't really like this in the end. So it's like, I also feel like horror thriller isn't really what I needed, but I'm dedicated to this vlog. This wasn't like scary though. This was fine. I don't think this was terrible. I think that there's potential for people to enjoy this. I think it has elements that are enjoyable, but it's not for me. I think that this is very much about these boys running away from their problems, driving cars, you know, not talking about their feelings, and like it kind of gets resolved a little bit, but the character development is very quick at the end, and even then I don't think there's a lot. So they're just not characters that I really like jive with and like care about. Like, I really didn't care about any of these characters, and I just feel like the writing, it's weird. Like, this writing style actually has potential for me. I really like this kind of book, but I just think there were a few things that were just missing that were really detrimental to the book for me. Like, I feel like it was just too out of touch with characters and emotions, and I do like, again, this kind of writing, but I feel like we just need a little bit more character emotion and development and exploration in a more emotional way. Like everything was very at a distance, out of touch, and I just feel like I didn't care about anything. I was just like, I literally don't care. And because like barely anything made any sense, like stuff started to make sense, but by the point it did, I literally didn't care anymore. I just wanted this book to be over. And I feel really bad because Aaliyah recommended me this and I really like her and her channel, so you should all go subscribe to her, please, because I feel really bad. Okay. I've hit a point, I think, where I'm starting to get to books that kind of are spooky. This one was actually pretty good. Like, it wasn't that scary, but there were a few points. There were a few points where I was like, oh, that's kind of fucked up. Don't like that. Moving on. So yes, I have read House of Hollow, and this was really like, I don't know, it was more unsettling than scary, but it was more unsettling than the Luminous Dead. Like, this was quite unnerving. Maybe unnerving's better. I was a little bit freaked out at points. So this is a YA horror thriller, I don't know. Anyway, it's about this girl who is from this family where she and her sisters have never really been liked. They're considered really creepy and weird. When they were young, they actually disappeared for like a month or something, and no one knew where they were. It was very televised because it was like these, you know, these kids have disappeared, and they were later found on like the side of this random road naked, and nobody knows like what happened. They don't have any memories of what happened. It's kind of this thing that's loomed over them their whole life, and they've never really recovered from it because of the way that everyone sees them. Present storyline is that one of the sisters has gone missing again, so our main character is trying to find out what has happened to her and finding out all of this mysterious creepy stuff and learning actually what did happen to them. So I was really gripped by this because obviously that premise is really interesting and you really want to know what actually happened to these sisters. So I really enjoyed that experience, and I think it's set up really well. Like, I actually think this is written really well. It's creepy. It doesn't give you too much, which I think works really well in its favor. The writing style is definitely, I'm only going to give you little bits and pieces to keep you wanting more, and then I don't know necessarily if the payoff is worth it. I wanted it to go a different route, but I'm not going to say anything, so I don't want to spoil anything. But I sort of was like, you didn't go where I wanted, but I appreciate where you wanted, and I can see where that would work for some people, and I don't want to rate this low because it wasn't personally what I wanted, you know what I mean? So I had a good time. Payoff not necessarily exactly what I wanted, but it was still there, and just the experience of reading it was really fun because I wanted to know what the hell happened to these sisters. Like, it was super creepy. I didn't actually really like the narrator of the audiobook, so if you are going the audiobook route, just know I personally didn't like them, but you might. I think that they were trying to be more like detached and spooky, but it just came across very monotone and boring, and I just didn't really like what ended up happening with that. But it was the only way I had to read it, so I had to just soldier through. So thank you for the recommendation, Shannon. I really enjoyed this and I gave it 4 stars. Reaction to Tilly, it like tingles in my ears. It's like my throat, but it goes up into my ears. So I just sit around going, it's a hot look, what can I say? So I have read Venus in the Blind Spot. So this is a short story collection by Junji Ito, who's quite popular here on BookTube. He is a horror manga author, and this was creepy. This is definitely the creepiest thing I've read so far. It was, I don't know if it was necessarily scary, but it made me very uncomfortable to the point that it is quite far above the other things I've read. Like, I feel like I just made a massive jump when I picked this up. I wasn't expecting it to be this creepy for some reason. I knew that his stuff was creepy, but I don't know. I just didn't think it would hit this hard. He's definitely good at what he does. He definitely does it in a good way because you've got the like slow build up, and then there'll just be a few really horrifying images and that's it. He doesn't like overdo it, at least in these short stories, and they kind of end a little bit abruptly, and I was quite confused with some of them, but I think at the time it's a bit like, oh, very abrupt, and I sort of feel like I'm not done with the story yet. I feel like I need a little bit more just to like end it, but in hindsight I think it works really well because it does just like end. It doesn't overdo it. It's just like a horrifying ending, and then that's it. They're horror. They're not there for this like emotional attachment to characters or, you know, anything. It's just to freak us out, which is what this did. There's some pretty like color art at the front that I want to show you, but it's like disgusting, so like I also don't want to show you. This one's okay. I can show you this one. So I guess I'll just go through which ones were my favorites. So I liked Billions Alone, which is the opening one, which is about this event where all these people are found dead, tied together with string, and it's drawn really horrifically, and slowly it gets to more, and it gets to the point where there's just like groups of hundreds of people tied to each other on trees and stuff, and it's disgusting. Okay, so the next one was my favorite, which is hilarious because I like messaged my sister after each short story because she recommended this to me, and I was like giving her my thoughts on each one as I read them, and my favorite was the second one, and she's like, so your favorite was the only one he didn't write, because it's actually based on a short story by a different author. And I was like, wow, I feel really shit right now. But this was The Human Chair, and it's about this woman who is an author, and she has this chair, and she thinks that there's weird shit going on with this chair, and she is convinced that there's someone living in her chair. And I'm going to end it on that, but it was very, very creepy. I don't know, it just made me so uncomfortable. And then we've got The Enigma of the Amigara Fault, which I really liked, and my sister said this is one of his most famous short stories. And this is about these people that go to this cave or this like mountain which has a bunch of like human shaped holes in them for some reason, and no one really knows why these human shaped holes have appeared. And the main guy meets this girl on his trek there, and she's like, oh, I've come because I saw my body, I saw my shape, I need to go to it. And he's like, what the fuck? It's like unnerving. It's definitely one of those ones that like the ending very abrupt, but it makes you very uncomfortable, like very uncomfy. And then we have Keepsake, which is the last one, which was another one of my favorites. This grave, which they can hear the sound of a baby crying under the grave, and they dig it up, and this dead body's had a full-on baby. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars, I think, but I think in hindsight I'm gonna give it like 4.5. I think it was really good. I very rarely give short story collections 5 stars, just because there's normally one that like hinders a little bit, whereas because there were a few here that I thought weren't as good. But I think overall it's a really strong collection, and this could honestly be a really good place to start with his work, because it's where I started, and I am definitely interested in picking his other stuff up. The other stuff might be a little bit too scary for me, but I feel like you got a good variety in this just to get a taste of his works and the kind of stories he covers. And yeah, it's definitely the creepiest thing I've read so far. It made me very uncomfy, and like every time there was a noise I was like it's going, where are my dragons? Trying to find where the lighting's nice there. I feel like there's a bit much. I don't know. I literally don't know what I'm doing. Like, I have a YouTube channel and I have no idea what I'm doing. What makes good lighting? Is this too bright? I don't know. I think it looks okay, but does it look okay? I don't know. So I have finished reading The Hacienda. This is another like haunted mansion kind of story. It is about a young woman who ends up marrying this man, and she moves into his house, which is the Hacienda, and she ends up feeling really uncomfortable and unsafe in this place, and she ends up finding a dead body, like the bones of a dead body in the walls. So kind of goes from there, and it's this very lyrical, beautiful story. It covers a lot of topics, but it's very much like a slow, atmospheric, scary story, and I really enjoyed it. I definitely like these kind of lyrical, pretty books. I think the writing was really lovely. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It was actually quite creepy at points. It wasn't like the scariest thing I've ever read, but it was like up there. It's definitely scary, but I think I've read some scarier stuff before this. At least I can think of one thing. So yeah, sorry, I keep moving. I'm in a weird jittery, energetic mood apparently. I don't really have a lot to say. I just thought it was really pretty. It was a little bit slow at points. I found myself drifting a little bit, which is why it isn't like a full 5 or 4.5. Kind of wanted a little bit more from it as well. I thought the storyline with the love interest was really interesting. Not sure what the author's intentions were with him. I was a little bit confused. I feel like maybe the messages of this got lost. I think this is a debut though, so like that's fair. I won't like critique her too much for that, because, you know, I think this was a difficult task for a first book. If it is, if it's not, just discredit everything I've just said. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think that if you like a good romp, a good time, a spooky house story, I think you'll have fun with it. And you like lyrical writing. I didn't love the romance. Like, I wasn't super invested in it or anything. I definitely preferred just the process of reading this spooky book with pretty writing. I think like it was just a good time. I'm sorry I don't have a lot to say about it. I know, it was just one of those books that I just enjoyed, and I didn't really think too heavily about it, which maybe I should have, because I'm a booktuber. And I liked the ending. It was very misleading. Well, not misleading, but very like open-ended, and you're sort of wondering what's going to happen to these characters next, which I always enjoy. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I enjoy it. So yeah, 4 stars. Thank you for the recommendation, Erin. It was a really good recommendation for me. I really enjoyed it. I'm sorry I don't have a lot to say. Sometimes I'm just like that, when I just like enjoy a book and I don't really like think critically about it. I just have a good time, and I think that's always a good sign, even though it makes for shit content. Oh my gosh. Sorry, my hair is an absolute mess. It's just been one of those days, but also I just finished this and I want to talk about it before I do anything. Like I need to get my thoughts out now before time passes and I don't know, I lose my massive enthusiasm that I've got going right now. Because this was 5 stars and I was not expecting that. Not because I didn't think this was going to be a good book, but just I didn't know if I'd ever give like a thriller, mystery, horror, that kind of book a 5 stars, at least yet, because I haven't read many books in that genre. I don't really know what makes a good book in this genre. I'm just so new to these things that I just didn't know if I would be, I guess, obnoxious and annoying enough to be like, I'm gonna give 5 stars. But I'm giving this 5 stars because I fucking loved it. Like, I loved this way more than any of the books I've read for this vlog. Not saying they're not good, but this was so good, and also had a really good romance, which probably, like, let's be real, probably popped it up that, you know, 0.5, I don't know, but oh my god. So I feel like Mexican Gothic is pretty popular on BookTube, but just in case you don't know what it's about, where have you been? But also, it's based in 1950s Mexico. And it's about this character who is like a socialite. She's a party girl, and her cousin, who was like one of her best friends growing up, has recently got married and has moved to her husband's house, which is this like creepy mansion, and she had barely heard from her cousin since she's moved. And then she gets this letter that's really odd,
and talking about how the family's evil and forcing her to do stuff, and like it's written in a really bizarre way. And so she and her father do not know how to take it. They're like, what is going on? So it's suggested that she goes and visits to see what's going on with her cousin. And so she leaves and goes there. And so she's now staying in this mansion. And like, they've got all these rules. It's very old fashioned and creepy. And she's very uncomfortable. And they don't really let her go and see her cousin very much. They're very like, she will see our doctor and our doctor only. And she's trying to get her like outside help, but they're very much like, we don't really like people coming here. And it's just like very creepy, haunted house, creepy family kind of vibes. Boy, does this take a turn that I was not expecting. I feel like it was a little bit jarring. Possibly the build-up could have been a bit better. And I know a lot of people think that the start of this is really boring, but I didn't. Like, honestly, I really enjoyed the whole book. I just think it takes a very sudden turn, and I don't know if that's intentional. It probably was, because I feel like this author, high up on my list of, you know, authors I want to read more from, because again, this isn't my normal genre, but I loved this. So I'm now really excited to read her other books. So I have faith that it was intentional. I'm not really sure what the intention was. Like, it didn't really worry me. That's why I'm not letting it affect my rating. But I will just say, like, for some, and for me a little bit, it was a bit jarring when like the reveal was there and it was this completely different story. But I think maybe if I reread it, I would see the signs a bit better. But I loved the reveal. It was so creepy. But I think what I love so much about this is it's like all the creepy shit and all the evil shit the family are doing are covering all of these interesting themes, and it's talking about so much. It's talking mostly about like colonization and eugenics. So this family kind of are talking about eugenics. They're talking about how people should kind of keep close within their family and keep like the really great traits alive, basically. Yeah, that's what eugenics are. No shit. And then they are like this family that came to Mexico. They built this mine and they had a lot of local people work there, and a lot of them got sick and died. Well, like all of them, I think. And they're just like put in mass graves. They're not marked or anything, and it's awful. This family are just awful. It's like all of this weird, creepy, horrific stuff is also like brilliant commentary in a really fucked up, bizarre way, which I just love. It's like everything had an intention, which I really enjoyed, rather than just like being there for the scare factor. It's like everything had a social commentary purpose, which I really loved. But like, it talks about so many other things. It talks about sexism, it talks about colorism, it talks about racism, like it talks about so much. And I don't know, I was floored. I absolutely loved it. The main character is one of my favorite characters I've read about this year. She might even be my favorite. Like, I loved her. I don't even really know what it is, but I love like party girls that seem really like materialistic and shallow and two-dimensional. Like, people just think, oh, they're just party girls. I love when they're actually like really nice, intelligent people. And like, she is a very smart woman and she is so kind. Like, she stayed in this creepy ass house for her cousin. Amazing. I love her. Like, in this awful, terrifying situation, like I'm nothing like her. Like, I feel like I'd be selfish and just leave, you know, but she stayed and she tried to help the good people in this situation, and I just love her for that. But yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I think it's brilliant and I just loved it. I wouldn't say there were ever points where I was feeling like giving up on this task, but it was very disgusting for sure, and I was very uncomfy and like, ooh, and yeah, so definitely check content warnings for this one because it is a hard read. So let's move on to the next book, and I think these last 2 books are gonna scare me. So this is when the nightmares are gonna come in. I'm scared. I'm worried. I'm concerned. Tilly, your mother is shook. Tilly's like, I don't give a shit, mother. I want my dinner. I just finished The Turn of the Key. And I was gonna say I have thoughts, but I actually don't really have a lot of thoughts. But that was a ride. Like, I'm gonna be honest, that was a ride. from beginning to end. Like, I was gripped. Okay, let's talk about what this is about. This is pretty popular. This is the, like, nanny murder mystery kind of story. So it's about this woman who was a nanny for these kids, and one of them ended up dying, and she was charged with the murder of that child. Well, she was actually convicted, and she's now in prison. And from prison, she is writing to this lawyer because she's like, I feel like I didn't get the chance to get my story across with the lawyer that I had at the time. I feel like this story takes time for people to understand my innocence. So it's these letters that she's like, I didn't do it. Here's what happened. Here's my side of the story. So it's her letters to this lawyer about what happened. So she took this nanny job at this, like, smart house. So it's a house that, like, everything's controlled by technology. There's cameras everywhere. Like, the mother is very intense. There's a whole, you know, binder full of everything that she would need to know about these kids. And pretty much straight away, as soon as she starts the job, the parents go away for a trip. And so she is alone with these 3 kids that she doesn't even know. And one of them's really weird and creepy and is talking about there being a ghost in the house and doesn't want her there and does, like, these little small things that are like, I hate you. And she's just trying to, you know, keep this job. Yeah, it's slowly showing what's happening. You don't know if it's going to go, like, the ghost route or, like, someone is being creepy. And it's a very isolated setting. And honestly, the whole time, you just want to yell at this chick to just leave. It's one of those stories where you don't even know why the chick put herself in that situation, and you're just like, get the heck out of this house. There's lots of really fun, like, plot twists, which makes some of the questions that I had make sense, which is what I guess happens with thrillers. But this was terrifying at points. Like, this is the scariest book I've read so far. There were dolls, there were creepy ghost stuff. There is, like, the sound of pacing above her head. So, like, she didn't know there was a room above where her bedroom is, but like, almost every night she hears pacing, and it is so creepy. Like, the way it was written, I was, like, so scared. It was the doll that got me the most, but the pacing, terrifying. So yeah, this is actually quite scary. But, you know, Ali actually recommended me to read this because she wanted me to read it and wanted to know my thoughts. She was like, oh, it's scary. I just want to see if you'll be able to do it. So that's why this is the second last book. And I finished it. So I'm going to make it to Misery by Stephen King. And that, boy, oh boy, is going to be the test. Because again, that has, like, stuff that I'm actually scared of. I honestly don't know how I'm still alive. Like, how I have made it through the night, these last few nights. I honestly don't know. Because I have been a little bit freaked out. Because of this fucker. Oh my god. This book is so scary. And disturbing and unnerving and just, yeah, it really, really goes there. It goes there. If you do not know what Misery is about, it is about an author who writes these books about this character called Misery, and they're kind of like mystery romance kind of books, and he's got a lot of intense fans of the series, and he has finally written the last book where he kills the character of Misery, and he's now done with the series, and he's working on another book that he thinks is going to be like a bestseller. He thinks it's going to put him up in the literary world because it's going to be like better quality than the kind of trashy Misery books. And he is driving through a snowstorm, and he ends up crashing his car, and somebody pulls him out from the car, and he wakes up in a random house in a random bed, and he wakes up to this random woman who ends up being his number one fan, and it's Annie Wilkes, and she has rescued him from the car, and she was a nurse, so she has all of these drugs, and she's basically giving him lots of like pain relief, and she's like, I'm gonna nurse you back to health in my house. And quite quickly he realizes that the woman, Annie, is not really normal, and he realizes pretty early on that he is in trouble, and like he's broken many bones, so he is bedbound and he's in trouble. So it's freaky. It is very freaky, and it just builds and builds and builds that you know something bad is going to happen, and it fucking goes there when it gets there. Holy shit, it fucking goes there. So yeah, I'm quite traumatized by this, if I'm going to be honest. I have to give it credit that it did a really good job. Like, he did a good job with this. I think the suspense was built so well. It's such a creepy storyline. Annie is so captivating because she is so unpredictable, and she does have these episodes of, you know, rage, and, you know, it's really, really unnerving to read about her because you know that she can just go off so quickly, and you just don't know what she's going to do because you just feel like there are no ways for this woman to hold back. Like, she has no, like, what's the word, like, standards. Like, she will just, you just feel like there's no line to be crossed with her. She'll just do anything. So it's very scary, and I think because not a lot happens for a while, the suspense is built so well. The fact that he can't walk is so good because he can't do anything, and she knows that. Basically, when his new book comes out and she reads that Misery has died, she loses her shit, and she's forcing him to write a new book in the series where she returns. It's called Misery's Return, and she's like, write it and dedicate it to me. So she holds him captive till he writes his book, and he's like, I know this, she's gonna fucking kill me when I finish this. And yeah, it's just the build up because you know what's gonna happen. And there are scenes where, like, she leaves the house for a little while, so he's like in the wheelchair going around the house, and you're like, oh my god, waiting for her to just like appear and go off her tits. Like, it's really, really scary. If anyone ever calls me a big dirty bird, I am gonna lose my shit. So I don't know what to rate it. I'm setting on like a 4 to a 4.5. There were just like a few things that weren't great. I think that also maybe it could have gone a little bit harder. I think that once it started, it could have done more. I feel like there's a really fucked up thing, and then it kind of dissipated a little bit, and I think I was expecting it to go harder than it did once that happened. Like, I feel like maybe there could have been some more lead up to that. I don't know. I really like the way that was done, though. I think that was brilliant. But I made it. I actually read all the books for this video. I made it to the end. Honestly, I wanted to DNF this at points because I was so scared, but I don't think, like, sometimes I feel like, oh, I probably would have DNF'd it if not for the video, but I think I would have pushed through because I really, really needed to know what happened. Like, I was completely captured by this. I read it in like 2 days because I had to know what was going to happen. I couldn't just put it down, but like I wanted to because it was like scaring me so much. But I think I am all spooked out. I'm definitely going to be going back to my romances, to my fantasies, to my contemporary fictions, to my lit fictions. I think I am thriller and horrored out. But yeah, I can't believe I managed to make it through the list. And make sure you let me know in the comments if you thought I was going to make it to the end. Let me know where you thought I would end up stopping. I really would love to know. But thank you so much for going on this journey with me of a chicken reading scary books. And honestly, kind of proud of myself. You know, I went outside of my comfort zone and I ended up finding like a favorite, possibly in my top 10 of the year. I absolutely loved this. Like, the more time goes on, the more I love it, because I just think about every clever thing it was saying through this grotesque shit, and I just think like it paid off. Like, it gave me everything I wanted from it and more, and I love this. So like, without this video, I wouldn't have found a favorite book of mine that I never would have read this. You know, I never would have read this without this video. Thank you everyone that sent me a suggestion. I tried to get to one from everybody, but again, there were some that I just couldn't get to because I couldn't get access to the books. But yeah, this was really fun, and I think I'm going to do it again next year. So stay tuned for next October. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you in my next video. But until then, bye.